For a full decade, he was the most wanted man on the planet, the guy who masterminded an attack that literally changed the world forever. So today, we're going to talk about the story of that relentless 10-year hunt for Osama bin Laden, a search that spanned the globe and ended with one of the most incredible raids in modern history.
So our story really kicks off on September 11th, 2001. You know, a day that started out completely normal but ended up as one of the absolute darkest in American history.
And the human cost, it was just staggering. In a series of perfectly coordinated attacks, nearly 3,000 innocent people lost their lives. It was an event that shook the entire nation right to its core.
And just like that, in a matter of hours, the man behind it all, Osama bin Laden, became America's #1 public enemy. The response from the United States? It was immediate, and it was absolute. They mobilized their entire intelligence and military machine with one single-minded goal: find the man responsible. And to make the stakes crystal clear to the entire world, they put a massive $25 million bounty on his head. The hunt for bin Laden was officially America's top priority. No question.
But to really understand this hunt, you first have to get inside the head of the man they were hunting. What was it that fueled his deep, deep hatred for America?
Well, bin Laden's whole worldview was built on this radical ideology. For him, seeing U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia or American support for Israel, he saw all of it, plus the spread of Western culture, as a direct attack on Islam. So in his mind, he was fighting a defensive holy war. But here's the thing, 9/11 didn't just come out of nowhere. It was actually the brutal climax of years of escalating attacks. You had the '93 World Trade Center bombing, those deadly embassy attacks in Africa, and he even issued a religious decree, a fatwa, that basically called for the murder of Americans anywhere and everywhere. So with the enemy clearly identified, the search began. And it would turn out to be this incredibly frustrating, difficult hunt that would stretch across the globe and last for an entire decade. The first stop was pretty obvious: Afghanistan. That's where bin Laden was being protected by the Taliban. So the U.S. laid down a simple demand: hand him over. When the Taliban refused, that's what triggered the start of the war in Afghanistan. And what's crazy is they came so close to getting him, right at the very beginning. In the mountains of Tora Bora, U.S. forces had him cornered. But somehow, in the chaos of the battle, bin Laden slipped right through their fingers and escaped into Pakistan. After that near miss at Tora Bora, the trail just went completely cold. For years, and I mean years, intelligence agencies were just stumped by one single question: where was Laden? The world's most wanted man had just vanished. It led to years of false leads and so many frustrating dead ends. And then, after all those years of hitting brick walls, intelligence officers finally got the break they'd been waiting for. One crucial clue that would unravel the entire thing. See, bin Laden had basically become a ghost. He was smart enough to know that any phone call, any email could be traced. So he went old school, relying on a trusted courier, a human messenger who carried all of his orders by hand. Through painstaking interrogations of detainees, the CIA finally got a name. Well, a pseudonym, anyway. The name for his most trusted courier was Abu Ahmed al-Qaeda, and this name, it would become the key that unlocked the entire mystery. From that point on, the CIA's work was just incredibly methodical. First, they figured out the courier's real name. Then, after years more of searching, they finally found him in Pakistan. And in August 2010, they tailed him, and he led them right to this strange, high-walled compound in a city called Abbottabad. And this compound, man, it immediately set off all kinds of alarms. It was like a fortress. It had no phone lines, no internet. The people inside burned their own trash instead of having it picked up. And most telling of all, they spotted a tall, unidentified man who was always pacing the grounds, but never, ever left. The CIA nicknamed him the Pacer. And they became more and more certain that this was their guy. So after months and months of surveillance, the evidence was pretty compelling, but it still wasn't 100% conclusive. A decision had to be made. It was time to launch the final operation. On May 1st, 2011, President Barack Obama gave the official green light. The mission, which had the codename Operation Neptune Spear, was a go. The team they put together for this was, it was the best of the best. 23 Navy SEALs from the legendary Team 6,
a translator, a military dog named Cairo, and 2 specially modified stealth helicopters that were designed to get them in and out of Pakistan completely undetected.
The raid itself was just this swift 40-minute storm. On the first floor, they took out the courier and his brother. On the second floor, they ran into bin Laden's adult son and killed him. And then finally, on the third floor, they came face to face with their target, Osama bin Laden. Just like that, the 10-year hunt was over. So with bin Laden dead and his body secured, the SEALs flew out of Pakistan. And the rest of the world was about to hear the news.
And later that night, President Obama addressed the nation with these now historic words, confirming that the leader of al-Qaeda had finally been brought to justice. In the days that followed, al-Qaeda themselves confirmed his death and, of course, swore revenge. Bin Laden's body was buried at sea, and some really serious questions started to get asked about how he could have lived for years in a Pakistani military town, apparently without their intelligence services knowing a thing. Look, the operation was a massive symbolic victory. It was a moment of closure for a nation that was still healing. But even as that 10-year hunt finally came to an end, it left all of us with a much bigger, much more complicated question. Can the death of one man ever truly end the idea he represents?